everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm with Anthony Ward. Now, Anthony Ward, how long have we known each other, sir?
Far too long, Mark. I actually worked it out. This is my 23rd year as a professional career choice interim manager.
Oh, my
23
goodness.
years. Yeah. So
And we must have known each other well over 15.
at least and going back, obviously previous organisations and so on. So if you said it was 17, 18 years, Mark, then yeah, it's that sort of time frame. Yeah.
That's crazy. And you and I have worked together multiple times. So we put you into some of our clients on many occasions, haven't we?
And I'm
think
very grateful.
At one stage, I don't know if it's the current record holder for the person that we placed the most. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. But if not, it's close.
Thank you.
So I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. Another reason I'm excited is some of my client base, as you know, because we've introduced you into some of them, they're basically large companies that have a very large mobile workforce. And often they're an engineering capability workforce, boys and girls in vans going out to fix things. And a lot of that work can be quite complicated. The margins aren't fantastic. It's very operationally focused and it's very easy to get stuff wrong. And now we've got technology coming into that space and it's transforming it. So I'll give a bit of introduction on you first, and then maybe you can give a bit of introduction about yourself, and then we'll explain the question that we've put together, and then we'll have a discussion around it. But ultimately, Anthony Ward, Change and Transformation Program Director, worked for multiple organisations over the last 23 years as a career interim manager. A lot of organisations that you certainly know. Ones with large mobile workforces, distribution companies. I'd say you were truly industry agnostic, working across multiple industries. And the one thing that I'd say I've always had as feedback when I've introduced you into our clients is, Anthony just gets it, which I think is just the best feedback. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself now that I've embarrassed you?
You have embarrassed me, but thank you. Yes, I took a career choice, 23 years ago to go independent and to work this way. And let's be honest, as so many people, I've not looked back. It was absolutely the right move for me. But before that, I was 10 years in technology, and I think that has really helped as well. Particularly, we were deploying the infrastructure, and if you like, back in the early 90s, laying the foundations for the digital revolution. So going through that .com and seeing organisations growing at just ridiculously fast rates, and seeing how to do it, but also learning at that stage of my sort of life in my career how not to do it, seeing the mistakes that were made, of overheated growth, and that classic boom to bust. So I do think over the last, if you've got the 10 years in corporate, if you like, and the last 23, together, yes, I've seen I've sort of take time now and again to reflect over the years, and where we've come from in terms of the paper and the speed with which information was flowing and so on back in the early 90s to what we've got now, where it is, that sort of instant society almost, where there is no time lag. It's just been such a change. I feel almost quite privileged in my life. This is the big, the technology has been the big thing about my working life, how it's changed the way we work.
That's a nice way to look at it. And I think I look at it the same as well. I think we're very lucky to be in an era where we've gone from analog to digital and seen how that's changed. And I think we're also into exciting times as well with AI and how that's going to change things too. But what we're going to talk about today is how tech-enabled field engineers can improve profitability. Now, from memory, a lot of your work has been ensuring that the field engineers have got the right tech, they're adopting the right tech, the change management practices are in place, everything's working right, and then trying to extract the most value out of those new tech-enabled engineers. And I think a lot of clients that we work with would like to understand what's possible. And I think maybe some of your experience in the last sort of 10 years or so doing that, I think will be really valuable to them. So tell me, why did we agree to that subject line? Why is it of particular interest to you?
I think it's very topical right now. I think a lot of organisations are feeling the squeeze profit-wise. I would say in the investor community, particularly private equity, for example, are wanting more and more. The economy is under a general squeeze right now, and I think this focus on profitability is because we've talked about it a lot over the past sort of that period, 5 to 10 years from now. I think we're now in a period where that talking's got to stop. I think organisations need to start actually delivering rather than talking about it, and I think certainly some senior leaders in industry now are starting to feel pressure like they've not felt pressure before. Because there's no space left anymore. There's no wriggle room. Backs are getting against the wall, and it's do or I'm sorry. We need to find somebody else who can do.
We're definitely seeing some early indicators of that, especially with American-owned PE firms where the portco is in the UK. We're definitely seeing more of that.
Yeah. So that cultural shift will, I think, come across, across the North Atlantic. We're going to see it. It's just a question of time.
Yeah, and tell me about tech-enabled workforces, tech-enabled engineering workforces. How can they get more benefit from using technology now?
I think what we've seen over the years is, as people go right the way back, we moved from analog, paper-based systems into a form of digital. And I think the focus then was around mapping your existing processes and procedures and using the technology to just speed it up, to give, but there was no real change to the way that people were working or what we were asking those field technicians to actually do. I think now that most organisations now have some form of digitisation in their field workforces. But what I think we're now starting to see is how can we extract more value out of those individuals? We're starting to see that challenge of what am I asking my field engineer to actually do? Yes, his primary purpose is probably to turn up to a piece of equipment and to fix it, repair it on a call out or maintenance or routine maintenance or whatever. But if you look at a number of organisations, what I've done work with recently, they have 50 salespeople who you would expect the salesperson to be there as the primary revenue generator for the organisation. Yeah. But they have 750 field technicians who talk to the customers each and every day, talk to multiple customers each and every day. They know that equipment and they know what's going on at the grassroots level. The amount of knowledge and the information and their understanding is huge. But the question here is how can you then extract that information and harvest it and bring it back into the organisation for the benefit of everybody?
So are you suggesting that with some tech enablement, the field-based engineers can almost become an extension of the sales team?
I think there's an opportunity there, yes. If a piece of equipment is starting, a technician will be able to tell you that something is on its way out. Yeah. You or I would look at it and say, it's broken, it needs to be fixed. But if a technician can say, that bearing is wearing out and is not going to last until routine services every whatever period of time, I don't think that bearing, but it's not failed, so I'm not, within the process and procedure in the contract, I'm not enabled or authorised to change it. But actually, I think you should change it, Mr. Customer. Yeah. If it were my lift, if they were my customers, I would change that bearing. How do you then, using the technology, photographs, for example, you can take of damaged equipment or things that are, that are maybe not right, to enable then, and I think the interesting angle as well is to look at it from the customer's perspective. If I'm a customer, would I want my technician who's looking after my equipment to wait until it's broken before it's repaired, or do I actually want routine maintenance to ensure that it's always working? And we're seeing, I think, again, this shift from break-fix kind of contract environments to one where the customer is actually paying for the equipment availability.
Yeah, that's a nice way to look at it. And then I guess, if you're looking at equipment availability, is it easy then to go to sort of value-based pricing, possibly?
Well, I'll give you two specific examples of industries where I've worked. Retail, one. If the escalator or for example, that goes up into a store isn't working and customers therefore can't get into that store, retailers I've worked with will tell you within minutes their footfall figures are down, significantly down.
Yeah.
So where's the incentive here for the retailer and the maintenance people for the shopping centre or whatever to get together to say, actually, what we're looking for here is to ensure that that piece of equipment is working 24/7. That's what you're paying for, is to get customers into your store. You're not paying, for a break fix. You want customers in your store. That's why that piece of equipment is there in the first place.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned something earlier about taking photographs. Does that mean that the field-based engineers sort of nowadays have all got sort of handhelds that are capable of doing that, or do they have to pull out the phone? Or
Most that I have seen have got a handheld sort of smartphone type of device that is capable of taking photographs, and the technology, the software that sits behind it is like a bit like just having an iPhone or an Android, where you can click, maybe 3 or 4 mouse clicks, and you can take a photograph that is automatically uploaded into a particular part of CRM that is then visible for everybody to see.
so if that happens, so the engineer takes the photograph and maybe the client is not around, or certainly the decision maker at the client site is not around, but there's a recommendation that something needs to be repaired or we need some kind of intervention before it breaks, then are the CRMs capable of receiving that information and then distributing that information to the right person, which then can enable a sales process to happen?
Correct, it is absolutely, and that's off-the-shelf technology. That's off the
Wow.
shelf. So the technician would take a photograph; it would be automatically uploaded into a CRM system. On the back of that, once that work order has been closed down, the technician signed it off, so I've done all the job, and has pressed the right buttons. Then you can again, it's off the shelf, an automated notification that would then be emailed back to the customer, that would say, we have done this, and here is a photograph, and and it's a very simple notes field. The technician says, recommend that we change this piece as well. It's on its way out. That is all automated, absolutely. And the way that it's moving as well, even further, is that actually that is being moved. That if you like, that customer notification or completion of works is being moved into a cloud environment. So it's not just being emailed to one individual. Then you can then have an account environment where a number of individuals who can access that same piece of information. So whilst it might be, for example, an administrator who is just making sure that regulatory compliance has been achieved, you might then be able to say, well, given that it's this, that, and then we need to send a notification to somebody else who has the responsibility for ensuring that for the uptime, for example, rather than just maybe regulatory compliance or finance or some of the other departments. So yes, that information can now be disseminated to multiple people very quickly, very easily, and not a great deal of cost either, because it's off-the-shelf software.
Yeah, we're doing some of that with another client at the moment. We've helped them install Azure cloud platform. Some people say AWS is better. We know there's a few cloud platforms. But then what we've also got is we've got a couple of developers and data scientists to go in and start building APIs that then connect with the customer's CRM at the same time. This is really clever stuff. What they're seeing is from an upsell perspective, which is my retail background coming to light there. But from an upsell perspective, they're already starting to see the numbers coming through for the upsell. And you know what? Upsell is good profit.
It is, generally speaking.
Remedial works, good profit. We all know this.
Well, I mean, Datsun, I'm showing my age now, but Datsun, luckily Nissan, the Japanese car manufacturers, made a whole business out of selling the original product at fairly low margins, but then capitalizing on spare parts, maintenance, repair, and so on. It's well known, yes.
Well, if you're a business where the sales numbers are a bit soft, and we're seeing that quite a lot in the UK at the moment, then if we focus on our existing customers and we look at upsell opportunities, some of this information, some of this data, some of this technology isn't that expensive. It's relatively straightforward to buy off the shelf. It could be a solution, but you and I both know that often it's not as easy as that. What are some of the issues that you've sort of run into as you've been trying to put some of this technology into organizations?
I hope this isn't too controversial, Mark, but I would describe it as the human limitation. We've got fantastic technology now. It is the people piece. It's what's going on between people's ears. The technology is fantastic, and it's only going to get better and better. It's going to get quicker. It's going to get more capable. The costs are coming down, and so on. So the technology piece is there. What I think we're now in an era is that, again, I'm looking back over the last 10, 15, 20 years, is that in the early days it was, oh great, I've now got this information. Now we're in this situation where I've got so much information. The human challenge now is what are the important bits of information that I'm looking at? But then critically, what decisions am I going to take on the back of that information? Because data on its own is dumb. It's completely useless. It's only as good as the decision that a human being takes, having analysed that data. So I think there's I would say there's two levels there. First of all, it's identifying the most important data and getting rid of all of the sort of the peripheral noise, if you like. And then the second piece is then, what decision am I going to take, making an informed, data-led decision?
Yeah, and I think when it comes to the people element as well, I think a lot of companies are getting better at understanding the alignment for KPIs. And I don't mean KPIs in terms of, measuring people, hitting them overhead with a stick, that type of thing. But along the lines of, if we've got engineers going out to site, and the engineers are really good at understanding what might break before the next inspection, and therefore they know that let's take your example, the footfall in the retail outlet is going to be very expensive if that starts to drop. So they start doing the upsell, we take the photograph that goes through to the CRM. We have to look at then as a bit of an incentive for that individual so that they can be rewarded as the business gets rewarded, as the client gets rewarded for the equipment to be running the whole time.
There's a huge piece in there around aligning all the whole sort of the culture of the whole organization around the customer and including the customer in that culture, because as you absolutely rightly say, everybody here wins. And I think it's something that, again, I've heard that I've heard a number of people say that does sometimes take some people a while to get their heads around. This is about securing everybody's future, because without a customer, you don't have an organization. If that piece of equipment isn't maintained, then everybody else behind them hasn't really got a job to do. They haven't got a piece of work there. So it all lines up rather nicely. But how you then, there's an HR piece in there around the incentives. But for me, the biggest incentive of all of this is that we are securing the future of the organisation here.
Yeah.
If you're a young, come off the apprentice scheme, for example, and you're 2 or 3 years, looking at, you're happy, you're enjoying your work, then you're looking at a long career with this particular organisation. Would you not want to sort of invest a bit of your own time and effort in securing the future of the organisation that secures your own future?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think as well from the client perspective, even if they don't buy, even if they don't renew that piece and, there's a spend authority that they can't get, or there's a spending cap on something and just for this month or whatever it is and they can't spend it. I don't think there's any client who wouldn't want to know. Of course they want to know. Every client I've ever spoke to just tells me, give me all the information, don't give me any surprises.
But
that's
that
exactly
again,
what the engineer's doing.
But that I think links to what I was just saying about then making the decision. You give the customer the information, but you let them make the decision. If they choose not to decide, they've still made the choice.
Yeah,
it is their choice, rather than just leaving it, and sort of kicking the can down the road, so to speak.
But then also, if it feeds into the CRM system, you've then got an account management team, or you've then got a sales team that's dedicated to make sure that these requests or these notifications or whatever they are. If the client said no, then it goes into a process. And from that process, that feeds into the funnel, which eventually goes into the sale.
And if at some point in that customer life cycle, there will be, whether it's a monthly or quarterly, there'll be a customer review. There will be some kind of conversation between, an account manager, if you like, and the customer. So if all of that information is in a single source, very easily accessible, then the salesperson is there. And by the way, Mr. Customer, monthly meeting, and on the agenda is and we've picked up these things. We haven't had anything back from you. Do you want us to keep them open? Would you like us to close them? What would you like to do, Mr. Customer? Exactly your point. You're giving the customer the choice. You're helping the customer. If it was us, we would do this, but of course, it's not our money. It's not our equipment. It's your decision. But that for me is a good supplier. That's somebody who is thinking about me, the customer, and giving me the choice, giving me the opportunity as a customer, rather than telling me I've got to do it or trying to sneak it through the back door, for example, and lose it in some other budget, some other way. It's just being straight, open, and honest, which I think most customers appreciate, certainly long term.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. In terms of the technology, so we've got the handheld device. It looks a little bit like a phone. And I think, to be honest, most engineers I see now are out on the road, out and about, have always got something like that with them.
Yes.
So how can, if a company's already got handhelds, but they're not achieving increased sales numbers, they're not achieving the upsell, all that side, is that something that you could help them, where you go in and you'd look at an improvement program rather than a tech implementation program?
Absolutely. It's about, you've got to start thinking and start at the customer end and then work it back. So many, and I think you and I spoke some years ago about, should IT be leading this? It's. Do you remember that one?
I remember that. That's true.
Yep.
Yeah, because we went through a phase probably about 6, 7, 8 years ago, where a lot of the clients we were working with, who are facilities management, engineering services, tech-based engineers in the field, and the IT directors were saying, right, we're going to implement this new technology for the field engineers to start using it, and it was carnage. I mean, it was absolute carnage.
Mark, I've swept a few of those up.
Yeah, I can only imagine, and that was a classic case of you're not bringing the people with you, and also we're losing sight of what we're actually doing, which is improving improving the service to the customer whilst improving our profits at the same time.
And it ultimately comes down to what is the business requirement here. So, who leads this? The technology people are great at doing technology, but what my experience says, they're probably not so good at understanding what the business need is.
Yeah.
And I've always been a fan and an advocate of the business leads. It's the managing director, the chief exec, who is sitting there as a business program saying, that is the business objective we're trying to achieve, and you align all of the resources, one of which is your IT department, towards achieving that business objective. But it's never just an IT project. It has to include, as we talked earlier in this conversation, the HR department have to be involved in it as well. If you've got people, you might have incentives and bonus schemes and all those sorts of things coming into place. So it is these things now. I see them. You've got to have the ability to bring all of those different parts of an organization together, focused on that single objective. But that leadership, that managing director, chief exec role it cannot be underestimated. Everybody then in the organization has that focus on that's the objective. That's what we're trying to achieve. That's what we're going to be measured on at the end of the year, end of the program, whatever. That's what it's all about. That's why we're all here.
And it's lovely to be able to say to the workforce, whilst we are improving our customer service, we are improving our profitability. That's a great message. It's not we need to increase profits, we need to reduce costs. It's customer first, and also guess what? You get that bit right, the profitability comes.
I have not met a field technician who would disagree with that. And the reason I would say that, Mark, is that let's go back to the very beginning of this conversation. You've got 750 technicians in the field. They're talking to the customers each and every day. If something's not right, who's the one whose ear gets bent first?
Of course, yeah, of course.
It's the technician. He's the easy one. Oh, yes, Fred's turning up to sort. I'll get on his back. I'll get him to, because he is the visible front end of the whole organisation. So of course, and these guys aren't stupid. They know full well if it's all working, the customer's off my back. Rather than getting an earful from the customer, I can sit down and have a cup of tea with the customer and a chat about the football. Isn't that a much better position to be in?
And also, I'm trying to think of, an engineer going onto a site. They've last inspection was 3 months ago. They made a recommendation to change a belt or a valve or whatever it is. Heard nothing back because it's a multi-billion-pound business and it's just fallen into the ether. And the engineer's company, his bosses, have not had some kind of process to follow up, and therefore this has just got all lost. But it could be something as really simple as the technology, because you've done all the right things as the engineer. The technology is they're saying, right, okay, it's due for the next inspection. On your toolkit pickup, on your parts pickup, we're also including this, because when you're there doing this, your comment to the client should be, whilst I'm here, would you like me to just change this?
Yes.
And you'd be amazed at how many people will just go, yes, please.
Yes, please. It's happened to me with my car, and they said, your brake pads are getting a little bit low, it probably won't last another year. Would you like me to change them? Who's going to say no?
Yes,
it's a safety issue. It's a convenience issue. Is it going to cost me any more or less if I have them done? It needs doing. I can't get away from having it done. So why would you say no?
Well, you could even be even smarter. If you know that building maintenance manager or whoever it is that the engineer's interfacing with on the site, if you know they've got a discretionary spend level for something that's important, you could always make sure the things you're recommending are below their discretionary spend level, and then all of a sudden you've got almost an immediate yes, because it's within his discretionary spend level. He doesn't want it to break down. That's going to cause him a nightmare. So it's a very easy yes. So there's lots of ways, I think, that field-based engineers and companies that deploy field-based engineers can improve profitability. I think some of the challenges that we've got right now is that a lot of companies have deployed the PDAs or the iPhone or the Android phone, and therefore it's connected to this system and stuff like that. I don't think they've optimized it. I think there's more optimization to be done.
I agree. The technology is there, and so much now the capability is off the shelf. It's now, I think, we're in this the challenge now for leadership teams is to understand what is possible here. How else can we use what we've got to squeeze more margin and more revenue, and ultimately support our customers even more?
Yep, I agree. They're my favorite conversations with clients when they pick up the phone and they go, Mark, I've got this problem, or my gut's telling me this, or maybe we've got something like this. I just want to have a chat with you because what have you seen in the market? What's possible?
Yeah.
And that's a really nice conversation to have, because I don't want to sound like I'm being arrogant or anything like that, but if someone asks me and I can impart my knowledge, it makes me feel good. I like it when they ask me those questions.
It's something I found when I was working in technology, that the technology industry was very what I call it left and right focused. They were very acutely aware of what their competitors were doing and what their capabilities were. And I don't see that translated into a lot of other industries. And maybe some of the engineering organizations I've worked for, without wishing to be too unkind to some organizations, I'm quite surprised at how little they know about what their competitors are actually up to.
I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that.
They're operating almost in their own little bubble without understanding, having these reference points left and right to say, they're doing that. That could mean X, Y, and Z, and we're nowhere near that. What is the potential impact on our business of that? It might not be an impact. It might just be something for awareness, but it might be, oh dear, we need to catch up here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's lots of opportunity to increase profitability when we're looking at field-based engineering teams. And, that's why I wanted to talk about that specific question. I think generally we're hearing that a lot of the sales numbers are a bit soft, and, the investors are not going to are not going to tolerate that for long. So ultimately, we've got to find ways to squeeze more profitability and more sales out of our existing client base if you're deploying field-based engineers. And what you're saying to me is that that's possible. We can look at technology, or we can look at optimization of the technology that you've already got, looking at the processes, aligning it up, doing some people and change management. All of this is possible.
I'd agree. The opportunity for organisations is there. I think the challenge for some organisations is, are they prepared to take it?
Well, I always say it's better to do plan change than force change.
Yeah, front foot rather than back foot. I agree.
Yeah, very true.
So, saying the same thing, just a different way.
Anthony, thank you very much for your time. We've got a lot of clients who do deploy field-based engineers, and I hope that they find this really useful. I found it really useful, and thank you again.
Thank you for having me.